Autonomous vehicles, they're already arriving in the area. What's the status of the project by JTA? Is it on track and on budget? CEO Nat Ford joins us today. Plus, Dr. Diana Greene returns to the show. We'll find out what she's doing now and ask about her accomplishments in the Duval County School District. And is there an answer for scenes like this when a rainstorm causes flooding in several areas of the city? The Chief Resiliency Officer weighs in on This Week in Jacksonville. So glad you're here with us today. We've got some important discussions planned this morning, and we're going to start with a well-known educator in our area, now exploring a different passion. Dr. Diana Greene is joining us, and most of you recognize her for 5 years serving in Duval County as the Superintendent of Public Schools. Dr. Greene is also a featured speaker coming up at TEDxJacksonville this year. So tell us a little bit about what you're planning to share with the audience member. TEDx Talks, those 12 minutes is all you get. What are you going to talk about there?
We're actually going to talk about the state of African-American female superintendents in the United States. So a lot to talk about in 12 minutes.
Something you have experience with. Yeah, so
yes.
what is the elements there that you're going to discuss?
Well, the fact that currently there's about 1.4% African-American female superintendents out of 13,728 superintendents. And that equates to about 198. And that number is increasingly going down.
Was that a component of becoming superintendent in Duval County? Obviously, the years that you spent here, lots of successes. I wrote some down here just so I could bring it up. Superintendent of the Year awards in 21, 2022, Duval County increasing its school rated A, B, or C to 93% during your time there. Does that have an impact on other school districts saying, yeah, I need to look at this more diversely. I need to widen the scope of who I'm looking for in that top leadership position?
Well, I think anytime superintendents are successful and anytime we have specifically African-American female superintendents or female superintendents of color, that their school districts are successful, it gives another feather in the cap, if you will, that we are quite capable and that given an opportunity, we will lead school districts in the manner that will help children, our ultimate goal, become great citizens of communities by having a high school diploma, which then leads their pathway down in the direction that they want to go, whether that's post-secondary, military, technical school. Our goal is to develop these young people into individuals who now have options.
Yeah, so they can be prepared for success at any of those levels you just talked about as next steps, right?
Yes.
What point was it in your career where you thought, maybe even knew, I'm going to be a superintendent of school somewhere?
Well, I will have to say I came into this position kicking and screaming. I'm not sure I dreamt of becoming a superintendent. I loved being a deputy superintendent. I loved being that second person, but Jim Yancey, former superintendent of Marion County, kind of set me down and said, you know, you really need to do this. And I decided to listen to him and actually ran for the office of superintendent. In Marion County back then, you had to be elected, and I did not win. So it inspired me to seek an appointed position, and I felt I had something to give. I had something to offer students, educators, and the community as a whole.
So let me ask about this, and then I want to hear about the new effort. You're a CEO of a nonprofit, but the school district reached historically high graduation rates, and then this past summer, a lot of people said, oh, this was sudden. You decided to retire. Still had some time left on your contract, and a lot of people have wondered, so I get to ask you today, were you pressured out? Were you forced out of being superintendent in Duval County? So
as I've shared with other people, it was my choice. Sometimes you have to make choices during difficult times in a difficult space, but I made the choice to retire and move forward with my career in a different direction. The circumstances right now is not important because I chose to retire.
How'd you feel? And you wrote a letter of appreciation to everyone when you left the district and announced that retirement. How do you feel about what you accomplished for Duval County Schools while you're there as the superintendent?
You know, I'm very proud of the legacy of change that, and I can't say me, that my team and I worked to bring to Duval County. We brought 2 referendums, highest graduation rate. All schools have been removed off the state turnaround list, so great things. However, I am not naive enough to think that, you know, that puts the district and everything's settled. We have so much more work to do.
Some
literacy,
business, huh?
yeah, literacy is huge, and we're still not there. Too many of our students of color are not proficient by the end of 3rd grade. And when you only have 44% that are proficient, you look at the data and it is very clear. Our students of poverty, students of color, they are still struggling with literacy, and COVID did not do us any favors.
No kidding. So talk about that a little bit, because you've been named the Chief Executive Officer for Children's Literacy Initiative, a nonprofit here. What does that organization do? What are the goals? I can hear some of them as we just talked about.
So it is a national nonprofit focused on anti-racist pedagogy through teaching of literacy. And the goal is to dismantle structural racism for African American and Latinx children in public education. By training educators, training principals, we go into schools and support them. We know that we are guests in their house, and we help them see the areas that need to be improved so that children, specifically African American and Latinx children, one, can experience a type of instruction where they have the joy and love of reading. 2, that they are seen and that they are validated, that they have a sense of agency about themselves. And our wheelhouse is actually early learning, early literacy, so pre-K through 5th grade. Our goal is to support schools, school districts, classroom teachers in providing a high quality literacy instruction. We really focus around the science of reading, that research and the research about culturally sustaining pedagogy, and we combine it and deliver that type of instruction in the classroom so that those students benefit. And the key thing here for people to understand is when those students benefit, all students benefit. So we lift all boats and help schools be successful.
Well, and I think a lot of us would easily agree, oh yeah, that's probably most important in that K through 5, that early literacy part, right?
Yes, absolutely. Pre-K, if you can start in pre-K, that truly is a foundation where students are desiring to understand the world they live in, desiring to be involved in activities that will help them enjoy reading. That's what I'm seeing today, that many students don't enjoy reading. We need to get back to, as families, doing bedtime stories. Both of my boys had bedtime stories every night, and they looked forward to it. Yeah. And those type of things, we can teach parents on, here are things you can do, because in reality, you are your child's first teacher. You mentioned a moment ago that you were kicking and screaming, dragged into a role as a superintendent. This looks like this excites you. You look energized by even talking about this. No, I went running to this position.
Instead of kicking and screaming, running to this position. Yes. Dr. Greene, I appreciate the time. We look forward to hearing what you have to say at TEDxJacksonville coming up in just a little while. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, so the River City's only Chief Resilience Officer in history so far going to join us after the break. My interview with Ann Coglianese. That's next on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
And in this segment, we're joined by Ann Coglianese, Chief Resiliency Officer of the City of Jacksonville. I was going to say welcome back, but you just reminded me, I haven't been here. We've interviewed, we've talked at other things. I know I moderated a panel with you, and I know you love talking about resilience and climate impact. So what's your main focus right now?
We are looking at all hazards that could affect Jacksonville now and in the future, in particular giving a lot of focus to flooding, whether that's storm surge, tidal fluctuations or big rainstorms that we've seen become more frequent and intense over the years. We're also really looking at extreme heat because we know that that can have a huge impact on public health. And also just people's enjoyment.
About that, here is some video from just a week ago. Different places throughout the city that a storm came through and then things are flooded. So it seems like, and there are some places in Jacksonville where we say, oh, I know it's gonna, if there's storms, I know we're gonna have flooding there. This is part of what you guys are looking at?
Yeah, and we're starting to see, like I said, these are storms that are happening more often. It doesn't need to be a named hurricane for us to start seeing impacts. And in a lot of parts of Jacksonville, really what it comes down to is compounding flood factors. So you may have sustained rainfall over a week and our tributary levels are high, and then you get a high tide. And that can really impact residents and their properties. And so that's something we're looking to analyze and that we're planning projects and policies to help respond to.
I know one of the big things we wanted to talk about, you said, hey, there's something new coming, the upcoming launch of the city's first resiliency strategy.
Yes.
What is that? Yes.
Resilient Jacksonville is our 50-year guiding document that'll help us respond to anything happening today and in the future that could disrupt residents' lives. We really want to make sure that Jacksonville is a place where people can lead healthy and vibrant and thriving lives. And that requires us at the city level to look at uncertainty, whether that be climate change or population growth, and start to think about how these big drivers of change are going to impact residents and what we need to do as the city to get ahead of those.
You took this job for the city of Jacksonville under the previous mayor. What's the conversation been like with the new administration? I'm sure Mayor Deegan is saying, yes, this is an important role too.
Yeah, I think what we're finding is that every administration going forward is going to need to be taking this seriously. These are things that are happening day in, day out. We're seeing summers get incrementally hotter. We're seeing storms get more frequent and intense. And I think part of being in a leadership role in Jacksonville will require every mayor going forward to really take a close look at this issue and be committed to preparing our city for the future.
So it's interesting, you talked about the extreme heat. Oh boy, this summer, it was pretty hot.
It was hot. I mean, we had a record number of extreme heat advisories. I think what we're going to be looking at is how can we better notify residents when there are high heat days? How do we get them to places that can safely cool them, whether that's community centers or senior centers that have air conditioning, whether that's pools or splash pads for kids. And then I think we're also going to need to look at ways that we work with Duval County Public Schools, recognizing that young people are uniquely vulnerable to heat. And then we're going to have to think about how we can cool physically our built environment through more tree plantings across the city, implementing green or cool roofs. Something as simple as painting a roof white in our downtown can reflect light, reflect heat, and prevent that building from absorbing heat and contributing to this urban island effect.
And I know you're speaking at TEDxJacksonville coming up here soon, and a lot of that is going to be focused maybe on technology, artificial intelligence. I was going to ask about technology that could make an impact, and you said, yeah, paint the roof white. I mean, it's not, there are some simple things.
There are
that can happen
high-tech
too,
solutions,
right?
and there's low-tech solutions. I think really where, and what I'm excited to share at TEDx is where we can use data to help us analyze what our future could look like if we don't do anything, and then evaluate scenarios for action off of that, and to see how can we incrementally move the needle to help us guide what types of policies we go for. In general, Jacksonville is going to need to be looking at how we build and how we grow into areas that are high in elevation, low in flood risk, and already connected to existing infrastructure. That's really going to be what moves the needle for this community in getting ahead of these future changes.
I appreciate talking through some of that this morning. I want you to know about the TEDx conference. It's called Human Nature, focused on AI and education, neurobiology and tech, resilience and human connection, and more. It's taking place October 14th at the WJCT studios right across from the stadium downtown. Tickets available on TEDxJacksonville.com. That conference running 11 a.m. to 5:15 on that day, and followed by what they're calling an afterglow party. All right, well, stay with us. When we come back, we're talking about autonomous vehicles in the River City. The CEO of JTA is joining us next on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
And we're joined in studio right now by the leader of JTA, Chief Executive Officer Nat Ford, an award-winning transportation expert. I love talking about this. Yes. One of your calling cards is innovation, and we've talked about this over the years. Exactly. Where do things stand right now with autonomous vehicles?
We're living in a very transformative time, and it's an exciting time because these autonomous vehicles, the development of the technology has advanced so much from our initial conversations. And as it relates to our U2C project, the Bay Street project, we're on schedule. We're moving through this project very smartly. And it's in the best interests of our community and the citizens of Jacksonville that we move forward.
So let's show some video of what we're talking about here, provided by JTA. But this is an example of one of the vehicles. And I know last month an announcement from JTA and FSCJ, you've got this new program to test autonomous vehicles on the college campus there downtown.
Exactly. And this is for the students and for the JTA. For the students, they deserve world-class transportation on their campus, but it also gives them the opportunity to learn about these new technologies and the jobs that these technologies are going to create in the future. For the JTA, it's also part of what we call our agile plans. It's also part of that process of developing the U2C project, how these vehicles will operate in that campus environment. We will study, and also it will inform us in terms of some of our final decisions as we develop our program.
So there's, of course, somebody out there is going, wait. Autonomous vehicles, so you don't need a driver, you're going to take away jobs from our community, or it's going to hurt the community somehow.
Well, you know, we at the JTA recognize these technologies are coming. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. We will prepare our workforce for the jobs of the future. There'll be higher paying jobs. There'll be jobs that have a lot less.
Somebody's attention right there, right?
Yes.
Higher paying jobs.
There will be higher paying jobs. That's part of the work with FSCJ. That's part of the work internally as it relates to the JTA staff. Our mechanics are going to be getting the training related to autonomous vehicles. And our bus operators, we think in the near future, there's no threat to their jobs, but we will prepare them for opportunities in the future.
So you mentioned this already, but let me come back to it. U2C, or Ultimate Urban Circulator.
Yes.
Is the Bay Street Innovation Corridor, is that still on track for 2025?
Yes, that's still on track for 2025, mid-2025. We are launching on Bay Street, 15 autonomous vehicles, but we're going to do it in a safe manner. It's very important that we do it safely. It will be, there will be manned. There will be attendants in the vehicles to ensure that if there's any disruption, those vehicles could be manually operated. And we have a control center that will look at the entire system. So we're not just going to take our hands off the wheel.
Literally take your hands off the wheel.
That's right.
So I wanted to give you a chance to respond to some of the critics. There is some criticism out there from time to time. I want to show you this. This is from the Jackson Mag. It was posted on X, formerly Twitter. The Jacksonville Transportation Authority's professed plan to replace the Skyway with driverless vehicles is a slower, more expensive, less functional transit solution than proven options like streetcars and buses. It's time to cut bait. What would you say to that?
It's very challenging to hear those types of comments, but we welcome that. You know, at the JTA, our team has had expertise and experience working on complex projects across this country. And on a regular basis, periodically, you're going to get questions about the investment. We believe the investment in the U2C is the right investment for our community. We're doing it for our citizens. The better we move, the greater this community will become. And being able to use these new technologies, and we're not alone. There's 8 other communities in Florida that are building or working on autonomous vehicle projects, and nearly 50 across the country. And it's much more prevalent as it relates to overseas in terms of these types of services. The autonomous vehicles will give us the ability to provide a greater level of transportation. And as that technology develops, that transportation will be on your schedule, the time you want to travel, and not on our schedule. When we talk about some of these much more, how would I say, capital-intensive solutions, streetcar, light rail, extremely more costly and limited in terms of where they actually can go. When we're talking about autonomous vehicle technology, not on day one, but these communities are looking at the future and the future of what their communities may need in terms of mobility. And that's the ability to move when you want to move and not when that train will arrive every
convenience is going to be a big part
and
of
where it arrives.
Well, let me ask this. So on the cost part, David Bauerlein of the Florida Times-Union wrote that the cost rose for the driverless shuttles in the UTC up to $65 million from $49 million. Are there costs that are rising?
Yeah, so, the thing is, the Automation and Innovation Center that we need, the control center that I mentioned, at the very beginning of the project, what level of scale did we need in terms of that control center and some of these other additional items that we think are critical to safety? Cybersecurity. At the time we launched the project, there's a certain understanding of what we may need for cybersecurity. After we've done, and we're now at 60% design, we think there's a heightened level of cybersecurity that we need to be safe, and that it needs to be distinct from the JTA's general IT systems. We made a conscious decision to ensure safety in that regard. We need a control center to manage these vehicles and maintain these vehicles. Could we use our existing facilities, or should we have a standalone facility to charge these vehicles and have it closer in proximity to the actual operation? Those were conscious decisions we made related to the success of the project. But overall, when you look at cost relative to the U2C program at 10 miles, fully built out, versus some of these other alternatives like light rail or streetcars, it's literally a 10x increase in cost. And so we think these increases as we're developing in this new technology are reasonable, but we do also respect these are taxpayer dollars. We need to make prudent decisions and be responsible for those decisions.
I appreciate it. I know a lot of people talking about it, excited for it. Some of them may be a little nervous, but Nat Ford from JTA, thanks for the time today.
Well, thank you, Ken, for interviewing me.
All right. And among our guests next time, former Clay County Sheriff Darrell Daniels. His discussion with me about what's happened since that scandal that cost him his job and why he says he wants to be back in the spotlight. This Week in Jacksonville airs each Sunday morning at this time. I'm Kent Justice. Thanks for watching on air on Channel 4 and the CW17. And you'll find us online at news4jax.com or streaming on News4Jax Plus.
See why every day more people are choosing News4Jax, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.